Typically, when we think of happy and sad music, we tend to think of happy music being in a major key and sad music being in a minor key. But in Madame de Pompadour by Murray Gold, the key is not quite so clear. It's rather famously a very sad piece of music, certainly among the saddest in the show, so you would expect it to be in a minor key. Madame de Pompadour has 4 chords that repeat throughout the entire piece, and those chords are F sharp major, B flat minor, a D sharp power chord that doesn't actually have tonality, and then B flat major. So let's look at our first chord, F sharp major. The root of this chord is F sharp. And generally speaking, the root of the first chord in a song is a really good way to identify the key. So let's assume that we're in F sharp major. Our next chord is B flat minor. Interesting. If we were to be in the key of F sharp major, which notes would that include? In F sharp major, we have F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, and F. And yes, B flat minor does fit. It hits A sharp, C sharp, F. So that's 2 chords now which are both in the key of F major. This suggests pretty strongly that the key is F major. The next chord is a bit stranger. There is a relationship between these notes, namely that A sharp is the 5th of D sharp. So if we were to play it like that, all of a sudden, given that we're in the key of F sharp major, this would imply a D sharp minor sound, because the third is going to be a minor third fitting in the key of F sharp major. That third is going to be F sharp. The only other third it could be is G, which would be the major third, and that does not fit in our key. So what we have is we have F sharp major, B flat minor, all in the key of F sharp major, a D sharp power chord, but implies a minor chord in a major key, and finally our 4th chord is B flat major. And if we remember our notes from the F sharp major scale, D is not a third that's in key. Obviously B flat minor is, which we had earlier. So we have our 4 chords, and the first 3 are in the key of F sharp major, but then the last one isn't in key. It's in the key of actually F sharp minor. So instead of simply just assuming that the key flat out changes from F sharp major to F sharp minor just to accommodate that last 4th chord, it's worth looking at the modes of F sharp to see if anything's fitting. And as we can see, none of these modes really fit. The closest one that fits is Lydian, and that's because for all intensive purposes, it is the F sharp major scale. The only difference here being a C and a B, neither of which are played throughout the entirety of this music. So how do we think of this? Do we think of this as 3 measures of F sharp major and then 1 measure of F sharp minor? Or do we think of this entirely in F sharp minor harnessing aspects of the Lydian mode? It's up for interpretation, but I'm going to decide to view this as an F sharp major piece of music. And we'll see more clearly why as we get further into the music. So the question is, if we have 3 chords in a major key that aren't really utilizing their relative minor at all, why do they sound so sad? And a lot of that has to do with the melody. Okay, so we start with this F sharp major chord, and then the first note we hear is A sharp. Now that gives us a very happy, bright sound, obviously, because A sharp is our major third of F sharp major. But then in the melody we hit a different note. We hit C sharp. Now that is the 5th of F sharp major, and you would probably expect that not to have too much of an effect, because the 5ths and the roots aren't going to have tonality per se. It's these thirds which are going to give us these bright or these sad feelings. However, C sharp has a very special relationship with A sharp, namely that it is the minor third of an A sharp triad. And what we discovered there is we discovered a B flat minor chord, which coincidentally is our next chord in our chord progression. So even though here we have a major chord, we actually have a major third and then the minor third of the major third on top of it, which transitions us into a minor chord, but still in a major key. But because we had a minor sound over a major sound, when we hear this not only feels very natural, but it feels especially sad. So over this B flat minor chord, the melody is C sharp, going down to A, C sharp being the minor third of B flat minor, so it's really emphasizing the minor, the sadness of this chord. A sharp being the root of B flat minor, because B flat and A sharp are the same. I do apologise for my inconsistent use of terminology. I don't care. I'm explaining these concepts under pressure, and I find it difficult to use the correct terms for each key when the notes are the same. And then in this D sharp power chord, well, we don't actually hear any tonality in the melody. We just hear octaves. We hear... which makes sense because that chord essentially doesn't have tonality anyway. But what that chord does do, by not providing any tonality, is it creates a sense of mystery, essentially, because we don't know where we're going. We have a good idea, we're in F sharp major, we have a feeling real resolve to F sharp major, but we don't know, and that's what this chord represents. There is no tonality, there's no direction for a listener. We're just left up in the air with where we're going to land. And because we're essentially transitioning out of F sharp major into F sharp minor for our final chord, this is the perfect transition to use. So we have a major chord, B flat minor, no tone, where are we going? So then when we resolve to a minor chord in a different key, it doesn't feel too unnatural. So we can start to see what's going on here. It's quite complicated because the key is ambiguous. But what we essentially have is four chords, three of which are in a major key, the last of which is in a minor key. That third chord, whilst technically being in key, doesn't have a key per se. It's an implied belonging to a key. I think this is really significant in the meaning of the piece. One of the things that Murray Gold is incredibly gifted at being able to do is to tell the story of the episode through the music. What you have is you have chords that belong to a happy key. But what this does essentially is just transition to minor. And to me, what that represents is that represents hope right there. Happiness. But then, ultimately and inevitably, it gets snuffed out. It represents the dreams Madame de Pompadour had, all the good memories that she never got to make, all the places she wanted to go. But because the Doctor took his time, she never quite got to go. And I think that resolution to F sharp minor is really interesting because we're using a B flat major chord to get there. That's how we resolve to our minor key. But this piece sounds happy because it's commemorating the life of a person. And yes, it's sad when someone dies, but this piece isn't about the sadness of death. It's about the sadness of no longer having the happiness of that person around. And when we land on this B flat major, I think that sums up the entire piece, really, when you go from here to here. Let's look at the melody a bit closer. So the melody is reflecting what's happening in the chords. So what we have in the bass is we have F sharp major, a major chord, and then we have and that G sharp is implying a C sharp major sound. It's implying a major chord over a major chord. Sounds happy. The next part of the melody is moving down from F sharp to F. So we have a chromatic change in our melody, but what is representing a fifth in our chord. So then when we have our D sharp power chord next, we move down to the next lowest available note in the scale, which would be D sharp. Then we repeat our pattern we had before. So it's not like in our first instance where we hit this G sharp and we imply a C sharp major, or in our second instance where we come down from F sharp to F, and what we could be doing there is we could be implying there, that could be the third of our third, so that could be implying a C sharp major sound still. When we move from D sharp to F in our power chord, we're not implying tonality per se. Because what is that relationship between D sharp and F? It's just a second, it's not a third. But there is a relationship between F and A sharp, namely that they're fifths. What's happening there is that F is implied to be the fifth of our A sharp, and when we look at the next chord in the sequence, it's a B flat major. So it's propping us up again. So now we had this lack of tonality in this power chord propping us up for our key change, and now the melody's doing it by reaching to the fifth of the next chord before we hit it. I don't really have much to say on what the melody does when it starts to repeat, like... it's just, that's a very standard technique to make it more emotional and more intense. That propping up for the next chord that I spoke about at the end, where we reach up to F and it's transitioning us for that change. That's actually happening throughout the entire melody, because when we reach up to these notes, it's transitioning us for the next one. Our melody is reaching our chord change before our chords do. And it means that when the chords come in, they really hit home, which is helpful because they're a strange progression of chords. So I suppose the question is, what key does this melody belong to? It could be major or minor. Still could be major or minor. The major chords underneath are making it sound like it's major. Once we hit here, that D sharp is undoubtedly major. But ironically, it's under the chord that doesn't have any tonality. So in our chord that's moving us away from major into minor, our melody gets stronger into major, but then resolves to minor, which suggests like F sharp minor is our home base, except we only spend one chord out of the three there. And the fact that our melody gets more major the closer we get to our minor resolution is just further conveying that feeling of losing hope, of building up hope and happiness, but then having it taken away right at the last moment, which is exactly what happens in the episode, which is why Murray Gold is so clever. Okay, so now I want to talk about why I think this is F sharp major. Sure, we spend most of our time there, but the ending, especially, is really telling. So, our ending is F sharp major in the bass as normal, C sharp, our major third, Now that's weird, right? Because that is exclusively F sharp major. There's simply no question. There is nothing in this that is remotely minor. All of these fit perfectly into the F sharp major scale. The only thing that would suggest it is that minor chord in the bass. But that melody itself, that is exclusively F sharp major. And it's so sad. We repeat that F sharp major melody, but in that final section, we hit our D and we hit our A sharp, the two things that are characteristic of our F sharp minor change, changing tonality for the final time, leaving us with a major chord in a minor key. Those conflicting happy and sad tonalities, I think, are what make this piece so emotional. It's the complicated secret behind Doctor Who's most emotional piece of music. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, then please leave a like, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do if you like things. Leave a comment if you want to suggest other pieces for me to analyse. Any ways to make the analysis more clear are always appreciated. I understand that some of this is a bit highbrow sometimes if you're not deep into music theory. But yeah, thank you very much for watching.